Back with another game where I was provided with a key, the DLC for Yuppie Psycho is arriving very soon. But let's take a look at some fairly spoiler-free first impressions of this story-focused horror RPG about your first day on the world's most disturbing office job. Like I just said, I saw that the publisher, another indie, was dropping promo on this game around the same time as they were doing promo for Vigil the Longest Night. I was only mildly intrigued by Yuppie Psycho's premise, but I wasn't completely sold on the art style that was going on during gameplay. I decided to ask about review keys anyway when this already year-old game was getting a promo push for its upcoming DLC and Switch release. And man am I glad I did! I initially felt that the gameplay's art style was simplistic and generally uninteresting, reminiscent of Ministry of Broadcast, the subject of my original Indie Stop Speedpass video. You know, barely better than Atari character sprites with a very low pixel count, thin limbs and faces made with less pixels that you can count on two hands, but using that to create a lot more animations in a very distinct style. My concern about being unable to find this game frightening did not last long because holy shit, this game absolutely nails its atmosphere. It's among one of the most unsettling games I've played in a long time, with plenty of mysteries and disturbing visuals to put you on edge. It does have a very effective use of lighting for a more modern touch, but that lighting can do a lot of flickering, so the photosensitivity warning in the start of the game is there for a reason. I even managed to get extremely startled by a section of this game once, and it looks like this. That's some talent. While I'm not being entirely fair to a graphic design that I've never been a fan of, when the game goes into cutscene mode or shows some stills or character portraits, there is some seriously impressive art skill being showcased here, with an obvious anime influence. Despite his very not weeby name of Brian Pasternak, the main character is the kind of mousy, nerdy guy who wouldn't look out of place in a harem anime. But there's anything but that kind of thing going on at Sintracorp. After all, your roster of potential partners isn't all that vast, and it's pretty obvious who Best Girl is supposed to be. Music is more electronic 80s vibe. There's a lot of weird synth, electronic new wave vibes, and mostly artificial instrumentation. That's to say, a decent amount of this music is that because the game plays up the creepy just as well, using that very same instrumentation to unnerve you quite effectively. But it's the sound work that brings that right over the edge. With the style looking like this sound work really needs to pull its weight, and it most certainly does. Just some outright nightmarish sounds will echo through the cubicles, and the game is not afraid to go silent at the exact moments that you wouldn't want it to. The buzzing of flies is a common occurrence to break up low-key songs or pure silence, and it is never a welcome sound. It's hardly the only unnerving sample, as every noise will have you extremely wary about entering these dark rooms and turning every corner. It's unsettling in all the best ways. Anyone familiar with the style of play for those RPG Maker horror games should probably feel right at home. There's limited controls and interactions. More time is spent talking to characters, collecting items, solving puzzles, and avoiding things than any sort of traditional combat. And even when a confrontation is inevitable, it's not handled in any way that you would likely expect it to be. In that same sense, death is pretty easy to fall into, even when you don't think you will. Brian will start running into hazards all sorts of quicker than you might think, and your health is pretty limited and not very easily recovered. The game may be more story and dialogue based, but danger is everywhere and you should expect to die unexpectedly at times. In that, the game does take a lot of influence from survival horror, particularly in puzzles and resource management. You'll have to scrounge everywhere for healing items and other such things to improve yourself and survive the day. Water from water coolers is plentiful, but mostly ineffective, unless it's combined with other items like coffee at the coffee maker or cup noodles in a microwave to vastly increase their effectiveness. Bread and cheese can craft you a sandwich at the sandwich maker, but each can be eaten separately, and one is used for another option later on. Once you find a flashlight for this excessively dark building, they will require batteries, but that flashlight will still work if they're depleted, just not very well. I've also found that batteries are pretty plentiful. Not something I was ever really concerned about running out of, but I'm not sure how deep I am into this game at the moment. Saving most especially resembles Resident Evil, in that it's done at specific stations with specific resources. Using a special piece of paper at a functioning copy machine will let you save your game. But you may also find copy machines that are out of ink, that will also need a cartridge to activate. Basically, the paper is to save, and the ink is to activate new save stations. I do really enjoy a lot of the puzzles in this game. Being a bit of an escape room enthusiast, the puzzles are clever environmental puzzles, where you'll need to pay attention to your surroundings and figure out how certain things will fit together. The archives were a particularly fun and horrifying section. Later on, a mechanic to sneak around is introduced, which I find a lot less enjoyable, as sometimes the pathing of the things that you'll need to avoid just will not leave the area you need to be in, but the moments are properly tense and nail-biting. From the very start of the game, you can tell something is wrong, from quickly finding out how this society divides its classes by actual rank, and the attitudes from others that you meet due to this fact, to the general disrepair and disgustingness of this office building, despite apparently being a highly sought-after megacorporation with vague descriptions of what anyone actually does. It will go further and further with gory and violent scenes, areas littered with corpses, and an absolute disarray, most of the employees being in a near zombie-like state, and there's plenty of supernatural and downright eldritch moments. There's body horror and baffling imagery everywhere. But as dark as this game is, literally and figuratively, the game is not afraid to be also very goofy at times, which could possibly add to this game's disquieting nature. Whether it's your coworker proudly admitting to photocopying his ass, complete with a full demonstration, or a supervisor with such delusions of grandeur that he's dressed like a Napoleonic general while riding horseback through the office. You'll sneak through an office full of HR reps with massive acid-spitting lips for heads after retrieving a bunch of marketing employees so burnt out on their jobs that they crawl around the office on all fours and need to be lured back with catchy but empty motivational slogans. I really can't wait to see what else this game has to offer, but I should probably hold back on diving too deep right away after all. This game has been available for a year now, but on the day that I've released this video, the new free DLC for the game should have launched as well as the Switch version. This will add new character interactions to flesh out more of your office crew, new areas to explore with Dread, and more endings available to add some significant replay value to what I'm already considering a fantastic value for its very on-the-nose price of $16.66. If this is the kind of game you'd be into, or anyone who really digs the vibe of RPG Maker horror games, make sure you clock in on time. Also, question for my audience, do you want to see a full indie stop on this game? Obviously it wouldn't be right away, as I'd have to get a few playthroughs in and see what else the story has to offer, and I obviously wouldn't want to do a spoiler-heavy deep dive when very few people have had the chance to play this new content. But if you want to hear a lot more about this game, let me know that you've heard this and you're interested by typing ... in your comment. I'll know what it means.